everyone. My name is Jo Franchetti, and I am a developer advocate at Deno. And you may have seen our big news recently. We just launched Deno 2. For those of you who don't know what Deno is, we are a JavaScript runtime. We're super fast. We're built by the guy who originally built Node, Ryan Dahl, and his aim in doing so in building Deno was to make JavaScript and TypeScript development simple and fun and pleasurable and delightful. And I remember, when I first became a web developer, and this is dating myself slightly, but Node was still very new at the time. All the web developers were using jQuery. You had to learn HTML, JavaScript, CSS, jQuery, and that was basically it. And I remember when I first started, I think I taught myself those over maybe a summer, and then I started applying for entry-level jobs. And I feel like developers these days, I really feel for new developers. The entire ecosystem, the tool chain is super complicated. There's so much to configure, so much to learn, so many tools to choose before you can even get started. And Deno aims to reduce this complexity by combining a lot of the tools that you'll find yourself needing right into the runtime. So Deno comes with its own linter, it comes with a formatter, it's got TypeScript support out the box, it's got testing built in, and it also comes with a lot of the standard web APIs that you know and love from the browser already baked in. So you can use things like fetch, you can use WebSockets, you can use web storage. And the whole hope is that we're making backend development for JavaScript developers feel a lot more like home, feel a lot more like the web development that we're used to. And if you're coming from Node, don't worry, Deno has full compatibility with Node. So your Node projects will just work in Deno. You'll be able to run them, and we'll take a look at that a bit later on. And any NPM packages that you have used in your Node projects that are written with modern JavaScript standards will also work fine with Deno. So to coin a phrase, let's put my money where my mouth is. I'm going to show you a couple of projects. We're going to build a couple of apps with Deno. We're going to take a look at some of its cool features, and we're going to see what the dev experience is like, and you can sort of see for yourselves if you think this is a delightful experience. So first of all, if you don't have Deno installed, you're going to need to do so. You can find the install command on the Deno site. And now is when we're going to test out my fancy setup. So awesome. Okay, so you can find the install command that you need for your particular operating system on the Deno docs site. This is docs.deno.com/runtime. And then you can choose the one that you need. I'm on Windows. I've already got it installed, so I'm not going to install it now. But this is the command that you would need, and then you can check whether you've installed it correctly with Deno -v. So if I jump over into my editor and I type in Deno -v, we can see I'm running Deno 2. So I have Deno installed. Awesome. And then you're also going to want to install the Deno extension for VS Code, which is going to give you some nice autocomplete help as you write your apps. So in VS Code, you can go to extensions, type in Deno, and just get the Deno language server client installed as well. And this is going to just make editing with Deno in VS Code much more pleasant. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new project. And Deno can actually scaffold a basic project for you. So we're going to do that to start. So I'm going to, in my console, use the Deno init command. And that's going to initialize a new project for me. And let's get into the right so Deno init, and I'm going to call this project, we're going to make a chat app, which is going to show off Deno's built-in support for WebSockets. So I'm just going to call it chat app. And we'll do that. And you can see Deno has created us a project, and it says that we need to cd into the project, and then we can run. So let's do that. Cd chat app, and let's open it up in Visual Studio Code. There we go. Awesome. So this is the basic project that Deno scaffolds out for you. So I don't know if you can see it there. Let me zoom in a little bit. There we go. So Deno scaffolded out 3 files for us. We've got a main TS, which is where we're going to write our code to actually run the app. And we can run this. Let me open up my terminal again with the Deno run command. So we can say Deno run, what's it called, main.ts. And you can see it's going to output. We've just got a little add function, which is going to add 2 numbers together. I can update that. Run it again. And it's run. Nice. Deno also has, we really support testing. Like, we think people should write tests for their code. So the scaffolded out project actually comes with a test already built in. And in order to run our tests, we just need to, test. And we can see that test is passed. So we're just using this assert equals function. So if I change this here, and we run Deno test again, we can see that our test has failed this time. And so I didn't have to install anything in order to run these tests. I didn't have to configure a test runner. This is all stuff that is just built in with Deno. And the final exciting thing to look at here is the Deno.json file. Now, those of you who are coming from Node will be already familiar with the idea of a package JSON. Deno.json is where you can configure the runtime. And it's also where you can do things like add scripts, which we call tasks, or add your dependencies, which we call imports. And these are things that you should all, this should be fairly, these are things you should recognize from Node. Since we're starting fresh, I'm going to continue using this Deno.json, but if you already have a Node project that you're porting over to Deno, Deno does actually support a package JSON as well, so we could use a package JSON here instead. I'm just going to use a Deno.json because that is what is set up by Deno init. And Deno also comes with its own set of standard modules that you can import to use in your project. So if we have a look in here in this Deno.json, you can see in this list of imports here, you can see we're already importing something, which is this std assert. And that's actually what is being used in our test. So we're using this assert equals to assert that 2 + 3 = 5 in this case. And yeah, Deno comes with this standard library, which is a whole collection of blocks of code that you'll likely find yourself needing across multiple projects. The idea is that we don't want you wasting your time sort of reinventing the wheel, as it were. So the standard library is there for you to use to get going quickly with blocks of code that you're going to use fairly frequently to leave you time to focus on your application logic. And you can browse the standard library modules on JSR. So if I just swap over our browser and our editor again, if you go to jsr.io, you can see all of the packages that are available to you in the Deno standard library. And these are packages that are guaranteed to work, that have been thoroughly checked and tested by our developers. So this is stuff that we want you to use to make your own time easier. So we're going to build a little chat app. So let's do that now. And the idea of this chat app is we're going to be able to open up multiple browser windows and chat between the two, showing the sent messages in both. and we're going to use WebSockets to send these messages. And WebSockets are just a way, it's a protocol that enables two-way communication between a browser and a server. So WebSockets allow you to send and receive messages between a browser and between a client and a server without having to constantly poll for updates. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to set up a server which is going to manage the WebSocket connections and which is going to receive the messages and then broadcast them out to all the connected browsers. And in order to do that, we are going to use a package from JSR called Oak. So let's just have a quick look at that. So Oak is a really great middleware framework for, as it says here, for handling HTTP. So we're going to add the Oak package to our new project. So let's jump back into our editor. And in the command line, we're just going to say Deno add. And we use the specifiers in Deno. So if you want to add an npm package, it would be npm : the package name. Because we're importing this from JSR, it's going to be JSR : in our package name, which is @oak/oak. And you can see that Deno has added that into the Deno.json file here. And now we can import it into our project. So in our main.ts, I'm going to get rid of all of this helpful code here that Deno has added for us. And we're going to import the modules that we want from that Oak middleware. So let's do that. And you're going to have to watch me fail to type here. Thank goodness for Copilot. So we're going to import application and context and router from Oak/Oak. And because we've set it up in the Deno.json with the name Oak/Oak, we can see that now in our main TS, and we can use it with that name. So then what we're going to do is we're going to initiate the Oak application instance. In fact, there we go. It looks like Copilot has our back already. We're going to set up a port. And we're going to set up a router as well. And just to get started, oh, look, Copilot's got my back already. We're just going to set up a really basic root @ which is just at the base. And this will help us test whether our server is up and running. We'll integrate the root into the application, and we will use allow methods. I don't know how people write without Copilot these days. So finally, we're going to start the server. There we go, and we will await incoming requests. So now if we visit localhost in our browser, we should see hello world returned. Let's test it out. Swap over to the browser. Oh, no, we're not going to see anything returned because I'm not actually running the project. So the thing that I didn't talk about yet is back in our Deno.json, we have this idea of tasks. So when I ran the project earlier, I did Deno run main.ts. And Deno comes with this idea of permissions-based model. So very like when you're doing web development and you want to use somebody's media, like their microphone or their camera or anything else that's connected, the browser will prompt for permission. Deno does the same thing. So what's happening here is Deno saying, I need to access something across the network. So you need to allow network access. And it just keeps your projects a little bit more secure than the sort of the Wild West of Node, which just allows access to everything. So what I could do here is I could say, instead of Deno run, I could say -- allow net, or I can, which is going to be a pain in the ass to type constantly. So we set up these things called tasks. You won't have seen that prompt that I just got. So I just got this security prompt here, which is saying, do you want to allow network access? And I can either say yes, or I can run the prompt. I can run Deno run again with the -- allow net flag, or I can set up this task here, which is going to run the Deno run command for us. So I'm going to just say allow net in here, and then in my command line, which I've just seen, you can't actually see because it's just off the, can you see that on the screen? It looks like it's just off the bottom. Let me just make it a bit smaller for you. There you go, cool. So now here I can instead do Deno task dev. And I spelled allow wrong. Let's try that again. There we go. Okay, and now my server is running on port 8000. If we open it up in the browser, you can see my little hello world in there. Excellent. So that's a super basic HTTP server set up with Oak. Now let's actually scaffold out some interesting functionality for our chat app. So I don't want to use, for this example, I don't want to use Vite or set up any other tools. I wanted to show you how to make a really bare bones application. We'll look at something a little bit more tooled out later, but for now, let's just set up a super basic dev server, which is going to serve some HTML and some CSS and some client-side JavaScript. So let's jump back into the editor. And in our main.ts file, we're just going to, so we'll get rid of this root for now, and instead we're going to say that we want to app.use There we go, and we're going to set the root to the current working directory in a public folder, which we will make, and our index is going to be index.html. Nice. Okay, so this is just going to send a file as an HTTP response, and deno.cwd is the current working directory. Yeah, so that's just going to set the index file to be the default file to serve when the root URL is accessed. So now let's make that folder. So make public, and inside there we will make an index.html. And we're just going to scaffold out a really basic chat app. So we're going to have a text input, we're going to have a button to send, we're going to have a list of online users, and we're going to have a div which is going to contain the conversation itself. Let's try that again. So that just gave me a little bit of boilerplate. What should we call it? Chat app. And in the body, I'm going to cheat this for time. So we have in here just a boring old header with an H1 and a side, which is going to be where we show our online users, and then a container div, which is going to hold all of the messages. a form which has an input and a send button. And I'm going to add some CSS in too, just because at the moment it looks quite boring. Let's see. Oh, okay. So I don't know if you saw that. I refreshed the browser and Deno said, wait a second, you've asked me to serve a file, so I need read access to this file. So in my Deno.json, I'm just going to add in the allow read in there, and we'll run that task again. And now if we just have a look in the browser, we have a very ugly chat app. So let's just quickly add in some CSS. This is going to be here's one I made earlier situation. We can have a look through the CSS later if you would like to. So in here, I'm going to make not a new folder, a new file, style.css, paste in a bunch of styles, and if I refresh in the browser, what have I done wrong? Let's see. Does that need to be set public? Oh, it's style singular. There we go. Okay. We open up the browser again. You can now see my beautiful chat app. In fact, let's change the size of that window if we can do, so you can actually see it. There we go. Stunning, beautiful chat app. Nice. But it doesn't do anything at the moment. So I can type in here and click send and nothing happens. I don't know who's online because I haven't asked anybody who's online. I haven't collected anybody's names. And it's not going to do anything functional because at the moment we don't have any JavaScript. So let's add some client-side JavaScript into the mix. So back in our editor, we're just going to also add in a script tag. And we're going to defer. And it's going to be type module, and the source is going to be, sure, we'll call it script.js, why not? Awesome. Okay, and we can just put a console log in here just to test that that has worked. Hello from script.js. If I open up my browser again, you can see there, hello from script.js. Awesome. So we're getting all of those assets served by a little server. But at the moment, we have no way of knowing like who's on our chat. We have no functionality. So let's start by prompting the user for their name. So in our little script.js, we're going to set up a new const username. And we're going to, I mean, this is super lo-fi. We're going to prompt and say, yep, enter you. Let's be a bit more polite than Copilot. Please enter your username. And if they don't, if they just close the prompt, then we're just going to call them anonymous. And next, we're going to construct a new URL for the WebSocket connection. So we'll set up a URL. And this is going to be, so we're going to do it on /WebSocket. Oh, let's do WS for typing ease. And I'm also going to give the username as a parameter. There we go. Thank you again, Copilot. We don't need a window there. Awesome. So all we're doing here is saying we're going to set up a new WebSocket connection. And then we're going to replace the protocol. So instead of HTTP, it's going to be WS. So we will say url.protocol equals, yep, there we go, url.protocol.replace HTTP with WS. And then we're going to open the WebSocket connection on that constructed URL. There we go, not href. And then we're going to update the server to actually do something when that WebSocket connection is made. So if we jump back into our server side, we can, in here, do our router.get again, except we're going to put it on WS now, and we're going to pass in context. Nope. And you'll see here that I'm writing TypeScript, and again, I didn't need to configure anything in order to do that. TypeScript is supported out of the box with Deno, so it just works. It would just work if I could type. So we're going to get the username from the parameters of that URL, and then for now we'll just console log that person is connected. So now if I open up the browser again, and I refresh, I should be prompted for my username. I can say Jo, and you can't see that, but in my editor, we just got a little console log saying Jo has connected. Awesome. Okay. We're going to now actually build out the chat application logic. I like to keep my files nice and neat, so I'm going to split the chat app logic into its own file, which I'm going to call chatserver.ts. And in our main.ts, let's just import the chat server. No, helpful but not quite helpful enough, Copilot. Thank you. And let's actually build out some of the chat server. So the chat server is going to need the context as well from that request. So let's import context from Oak. And this is just going to give us information about the HTTP request. So it gives us access to things like headers, to URL parameters, to the body, and importantly, it's what lets us upgrade our connection from HTTP to WebSockets. So we're going to export, we'll just call it chat server. Yep. And I'm going to put in a method in here called handle connection, which is going to handle our connection. Which will get the context. Let's see, and what has it done here? Hand in the wrong place on the keyboard. Socket. So we're going to upgrade. So that's what's going to allow us to move from polling to WebSockets. And then we're going to get the username and we'll just console log it. Yeah, so now we should be able to jump back into our main.ts and actually use that method that we just exported. So let's do that. Where are we going to put this? Let's put it here. No, I want lowercase. And we will then change this. So instead of, because we've just passed all of that across through to the chat server. So we're going to say chat server handle connection and pass it the context. Nice. Okay. So let me just briefly jump back into the browser, refresh, make sure this is still working. And yeah, you can see Jo connected. Awesome. Okay. So now we know that a user is online, we can go into our server-side JavaScript and actually add their name to a list of online users. So, sorry, onto our client-side JavaScript is what I meant. So let's do that. So let's make a new function called update user list. And we're going to get the usernames. And let's see if Copilot can work out what I'm going to do. No, we're not going to in an HTML. And we're going to say, yeah, create a list, create a bunch of LIs, add each username into an LI and append that to the list of username, to the username list. I can't remember, what did I call it? I don't think I called it user list, did I? I called it users. Excellent. Okay. And we also know that we want the user to be able to type their message into the input. So let's make a selector for the input and make a selector for the form as well. Did I call them input and form in my HTML? I called it form and input. Excellent. And I want the cursor focus to go straight onto the input when they've finished entering their name so that they can start typing a message immediately. So I'm just going to do input.focus. Just a nice bit of extra usability there. And then I'm going to, when the form is submitted, I want to send a message across the socket. So let's do that. Form.onSubmit. E.prevent default message is input value. We empty out the thing, and then we're going to socket.send. We're going to stringify the message along with what I'm going to call a message event. So we will send and then send the message itself as well. So because we've made the form a valid HTML form, the submit happens on pressing the submit button or on pressing enter. So we don't need to do any like listening for keyboards or listening for clicks or anything like that. We just have our on submit. But now we need to update the server to actually do something with this message. So we've done our WebSocket.send. We need to actually update the chat server to do something with it. We're writing TypeScript here, as I mentioned. So the first thing I'm going to do is set up some types for us to use. So I'm just going to extend the WebSocket type to include the username. So let's just make a nice new type. There we go. Thank you, Copilot. So all that is we've got a WebSocket and it's also going to have a username. And then I'm going to set up a type for the app event as well. which is going to just be a event, which is a string, and cool, nice. And then we can upgrade our socket here to be as WebSocket with username. Very nice. And then I'm going to also set up a new property, which I'm going to call connected clients, which is going to store a connection of all of the WebSocket, store a collection of all of the WebSocket's connections. Yes, perfect. Okay. And then we're going to stop people from being able to take usernames that already exist. So once we've got the username, we will say if this dot connected client that has username, we'll do socket.close with a 1008 user already connected. Lovely. And this is complaining because, oh, okay. Just going to cheat that. So because we know that the username is always going to be assigned, it's either going to be something they typed in or it's going to be the word anonymous. I'm just going to cheat that for now. Awesome. And then we're going to return here. So they'll just be asked to give a different username. And now let's set up some more methods to actually flesh out our app. So we know we're going to want to send a message. So let's set that up. We know we are going to want to do something when a client disconnects. And we're going to want to update the list of usernames when a client joins or when a client connects. So let's build out first the client disconnected. And we're going to need to pass a username, which is a string. And we're just going to say when the client disconnects, delete the username from the list and broadcast the list of new usernames. Copilot already. Did I spell connected with 3 N's? Amazing. Let's fix that. Thank goodness for spell check built into VS Code. Awesome. Okay. So when the client disconnects, we're just going to remove and we're going to rebroadcast the list of usernames. So let's update now the broadcast names function, since we're going to be doing that. So what we're going to do is we're going to extract the keys from the connected clients map to get the list of the usernames, and then we'll create an array of them. And then we're just going to broadcast a message with that new array. So we will say const usernames. Something I haven't actually mentioned yet, because I'm very bad at remembering to put semicolons on the end of lines. Deno comes with a built-in formatter. So if you work with people who do bizarre things to the shape of their code, you can actually run Deno format and it'll auto format your file for you so it looks beautiful. And it'll add semicolons onto lines where you've forgotten to add them, which is my crime. And obviously the formatter is fully customizable, so you can change the rules that it uses. So if you're someone who doesn't like semicolons, you don't have to have them. And the Deno.json is where you would set up the rules for the formatter, for the linter, for the test runner. yeah, just a little aside there. So yes, what are we doing? We're going to then broadcast those usernames with an event of update users. And also usernames. There we go. Okay, awesome. So now I've just made a method called broadcast, which doesn't exist. So let's create that. Which is going to indeed need an app event. And it's going to take the message string. It's going to, create a, it's going to stringify the message and then send that message. So yeah, in fact, slightly nicer naming there. For yeah, okay, awesome. So for each of the clients, send that message. And finally, let's make that send function. Just gonna put some spaces in between here, give this a bit of breathing room. There we go. That's a bit nicer, isn't it? So we need to give this some information. So it's going to need the username and the message. Not the app event. And yep. So we're going to say class data is our message.data. I've lost a bracket there somehow. And if it's not equal to send message, just return. We like to return early and often here. Is it telling me I've got some extra bracket there? Yes, I have. Okay, excellent. And otherwise, this dot broadcast, and we're going to broadcast. Event is going to be send message. The username is going to be the username, and the message is going to be message data. Lovely. Okay. Let's format again. Okay, awesome. So now we can actually call these methods to actually do things when the WebSocket connection, when stuff happens on the WebSocket connection. So either a message is sent, someone connects, or someone disconnects. So let's do that next. So up here, where are we? Yeah. So in our handle connection, we are going to say socket.username is going to be username, and socket on open, we're going to say, so on open, we want to broadcast the usernames. So we will say here, broadcast usernames, and we're going to bind it the this, and then we're going to say socket close, and on close we want to run our client disconnected and give it the username, and then when a message is received, so socket.onMessage, exactly that, we're going to say this.send socket.username and the message. And then finally, we're going to set the connected clients up with the username and the connection. So we will say this. Copilot already knows what I need to do. So the final thing that we need to do now is actually update our client-side JavaScript to deal with the messages that it is going to receive. Okay, we're all good here. So let's jump back into our script.js. So when we receive a message from the WebSocket server, it's going to contain a username and it's going to contain some sort of message text. We want to be able to display both in the browser. And we could do this with, creating elements in JavaScript and appending them, but I think it's actually nicer to use a template in the HTML. Templates are super cool. In fact, I'm just going to copy pasta again for brevity's sake. So all I've done here is, so we've got a template, which I've given an ID of message. Inside that template is just a container div for styling, a span, which is going to contain the username, and a paragraph, which is going to contain the message itself. Then back in our script.js, we can create a function to run when the message is received, which is going to get that template and populate it and append it to the HTML. So let's put that in here. So we'll call it add message. It's going to get the username and the message. And client's template is, what did I call it? I just called it messages, didn't I? I think. Message singular. We will clone that. Yep. And then we'll do except we're not doing that. We're just getting a span. We're setting the context to be the text to be the username. Can't spell. That says spen. And then we'll grab the P and we'll put the message in there. And then I'm going to do something clever here. So you'll see here, Copilot has suggested that we append. I'm going to prepend, and the reason for that is, when you're writing in a text chat, you want the messages to scroll off the top of the screen as they come in, and obviously by default, it will be adding them in, but our scroll bar won't move. So what I've done in the CSS is actually invert the container, and then what we're doing is prepending. So we're putting the thing at the bottom, and our scroll will actually move down as new messages come in, which was a hack that I found on W3C, I think, of all places, and I quite like it. So now when a message is received, let's actually do something with it. So under here, we are going to ws.onMessage. We're going to parse our, yep, exactly that. Well, exactly that. Okay, so what we're going to create a new variable which is going to contain the data, which is going to be the parsed data. Then we're going to make a switch statement, which is going to say, in the case that we are updating users, we're going to update our user list with the usernames. And in the case that it is a send message, we're going to add the message data. So we'll get the username and the message, and we will run our add message function that we just made. Whew. Okay, that was a whirlwind introduction. So let's take a quick look at that in the browser and see if it actually works. Come on. Process failed. What did I get wrong? Chat server. I've got a typo somewhere. I lost a bracket somewhere. Okay. That seems to be running now. There we go. Okay, awesome. Jo. Hello. Cannot read properties of null. Have I missed a name on something? Get element by ID message. Oh, yeah. I bet I didn't call it that, did I? What did I call it? Conversation. There we go. Yay! Okay, awesome. And let's open it up in another browser window. Hooray! Okay, so that was a super speedy building of an entire chat app. So something else that I wanted to show you very briefly was that your Node projects can also work in Deno. So let's just make an entire new project. And perhaps we won't build out an entire second app, but we will just have a quick look at using a toolchain that you might know and love. I know a lot of people obviously are using Next right now, and it's really important that Deno runs your Next project. So I just want to prove to everybody that it does, that your package.json completely works, that your npm imports completely work in Deno. So let's make a brand new Next project. So we can do Deno run -a, and what -a does, we saw those permission prompts earlier. -a is just saying allow everything, so allow access to everything. It's kind of like the default set in your Node. And we're going to say npm create next app at latest, and we'll call it test next app. And we'll just take all of the defaults and we'll watch it install. This is when we pray that my internet is fast enough for this. My original hope was to build out an entire Next project with you as well, but I took way too long on that chat app. So while we're watching this install, I'll just show you some resources that you can use for building Next apps. So if you go to docs.deno.com/runtime, we've got a whole load of tutorials in here. So if you're using React, if you're using Next, if you're using Vue, you can absolutely use those in Deno. The app that I was going to build with you is actually all written out here. So if you want to follow along, you can totally build an entire dinosaur app in here. But let's just jump back into my editor so you can see we've built a next app. So if we cd into test next app and we open that up in here, so you'll see here, I mean, this is just a standard next app. We've all seen this before. It has a package JSON, which has scripts and dependencies. I can do Deno run dev, Deno task dev. And it's going to run and set up a little next app for us. Which should open up in my browser once it's finished compiling. There we go. So we have a fully functional Next app, which works exactly as you would expect Next to work. You can run it with Deno. You can, if you want to, add dependencies into the package JSON, and Deno will be able to use them. You can also, if you want to, add a Deno JSON, if you want to do things like start configuring the formatter or the linter. Or indeed, if you just prefer adding your dependencies in there, Deno will be able to work fine with both a package JSON and a Deno JSON in there. That's no problem. Yeah, so if you want to see the code of the project that we built today, you absolutely can. It is on GitHub. Let me get you the link. In fact, let's open up the browser and actually have a look at it. So the tutorial that I walked through today was our chat app. And the finished project is here. So let me just paste that into the chat. Or I can zoom in here for anyone who's watching online. So if you want the code, you can see it here. We also have a whole bunch of other tutorials in this repository. So if you go to the Deno repository and search for tutorial, if I can spell, there we go. There's a whole bunch of tutorials in here, and I am adding more every day. So check back for more. And if there's particular libraries that you're interested in, I would love to hear, and I can add those in. But the takeaway message should be Deno just works. You shouldn't have to do anything special. There shouldn't be any giant sort of porting job when migrating from Node to Deno. The things that you know and love will just work with Deno. And if the NPM packages that you're trying to use don't use ES modules, you will need to update them, but we also have some helpful advice on how to do that. So if you go to the Deno documentation, we have a whole load of advice on upgrading from CommonJS to ES modules over there. Whew. Okay, that was a whirlwind of an introduction to Deno. I hope that was interesting. I haven't seen any questions come in. I don't know if we've had any questions at all.
There was at least one, which was basically around essentially what you kind of were covering here. Somebody who is experiencing like trying to run an existing Node app on Deno.
Mhm.
and sharing some of the errors that they came across, including um, like a relative import path module not prefixed with I guess it says to use node colon module. Like,
Yeah.
is there something like if you have an existing Node app and you want to go ahead and port it over, are there things you're going to run into like that? Or is there some kind of configuration? Maybe that's like you have to run it with that -a or something like that, or what do you have
So, I
to
mean,
do?
it will depend entirely on, it'll depend on the project itself. We do have a guide. I'm just trying to find it now. Um, so we have a whole guide for things that you might run into. So the majority of projects should just work. There are, however, a bunch of node built-ins that you may need to do, the node specifier. So for example, if you're using OS, you might, or you're using node specific FS, for example, you would need to do node colon FS or node colon OS to use those built-in node modules, but then Deno will support them.
Mhm.
If you're using your npm packages, again, the npm specifier is the way to go. And then, as I mentioned, if it's not using ES modules, you will need to update it to use ES modules. Deno only supports ES modules, doesn't support CommonJS. But we do also have some tooling that'll help you swap over. So the place to look is docs.deno.com/runtime/fundamentals/node.
Okay. So yeah, I think the other error they were running into was something along those lines, which is because it says require is not defined,
Yeah,
right? Like so, yeah. So anything that uses require, you're gonna have to go ahead and update it.
you're going to have to
So
update.
then, okay. So then the follow-up question for me would be like, okay, let's say I have a node project like that and I port it over to Deno. What are some of like the things, the benefits that I might see as for doing that?
So Deno's built in Rust, so it's actually slightly faster than Node. So that's the first thing, but we're talking seconds difference there. So that may not be enough for people. So the things that I spoke about, the built-in support for TypeScript, the built-in test runner, the built-in linter, the built-in formatter, all of these things just mean that you can sort of flatten your project a lot more. We don't need to be importing a load of dependencies. We don't need to be doing a load of configuration. Like, it keeps your project folders a lot neater.
Mhm.
Deno also, if you're building a Deno project from scratch, Deno, you will notice, doesn't have that node modules folder, which is just it uses a centralized global cache instead, which again just keeps your project folder a little bit neater. And
Mhm.
then the other thing that we looked at was the security angle. So it can be a bit of a wild west out there, and sometimes, especially if you're installing a bunch of dependencies and you're not looking at exactly what all of them are doing, they may be accessing things that you're not expecting them to. And getting that warning in the console is actually quite a nice way to keep an eye on what's accessing what. So, I set up an HTTP server and it asked for network access. Like, yes, of course you can have network access. You need that. But if I'd installed some dependency and suddenly something was asking for network access, I might, want to look at what was happening in that dependency. It just keeps you a little bit safer.
Yeah. In fact, that I think our last presentation about a month ago was about specifically about dependencies and the kind of security nightmares they can cause.
Yeah.
Node being among, the npm registry being among the biggest like kind of potential attack vectors that you could find. So that makes a lot of sense. But if I have an existing one, I mean, I guess is there like a path for transitioning off of npm now that I've got full npm compatibility, but like maybe I want to start kind of taking the benefits of those security, like I can transition to moving some of those
Yeah,
to
I mean,
JSR?
you will still get that security. So as soon as you start running in Node, as soon as you type, Deno task dev, it's going to say, you need access to this, and this. It's automatically going to prompt if those things are needed. So it's a nice way
Okay.
to actually find out if your program is doing stuff that you don't know what it's doing.
Okay, yeah, okay. So I don't even need to use the Deno centralized cache versions of anything. Then you get that security automatically even with the NPM.
Yeah.
That's very cool. Excellent. Yeah, and I think one of the things that like you showed is just that this isn't learning something entirely new. That like the learning curve is pretty low, and now with NPM compatibility, it should be about as low as
Yeah.
possible.
So
So
Deno has support for the whole of Node's APIs. So everything, all that knowledge that you already have, like a lot of the people that I talk to are like, I don't want to learn an entirely new thing. All of that knowledge is fully compatible. You can bring it all over. Nobody wants to learn everything from scratch. You've got 10 so more years of experience in Node now. Like it would be ridiculous to ask people to learn an entirely new tool. And Deno fully recognizes that. So you can actually check out the API compatibility that we have again in the Deno docs. So if you go to docs.deno.com/API, you can have a look at all of the Deno APIs. You can see all of the web APIs that Deno supports, and you can see all of the Node APIs in there as well, which Deno also supports. So all of the documentation is there.
awesome. And hopefully we can even get you back in the future. Maybe talk about like some of the Deno deploy and Edge stuff that you all have.
Yeah,
So that
absolutely.
would
I'd
that would
really
be
love
really cool.
to show deploying a whole project next time.
In the next episode.